All right. Assalamualaikum, everyone, and a very good afternoon to all the C-suites, Datuk Nick, C-suites, Prof. Satar, and also we have a Taranjit Singh as well, the consultant. Prof. Satar is calling in from Singapore, and Prof. Satar will be providing us on some elements of leadership in disruptive times. This is part of the Human Capital Al Falah Leadership Series, Luncheon Talk. It's just bit-sized pieces, like 2 hours learnings from the renowned leadership icons, and Prof. Satar is the first. Very honored to have Prof. Satar. Thank you very much for allowing and giving time for TH for this space. Yeah, and we have our CEO here, Datuk Nick. You want to say something to welcome Prof from Singapore? Yeah. You can see Datuk, right? Prof?
Very far, yeah.
Okay, I'm here, Prof. First of all, on behalf of Tabung Haji and the leadership team, I'm registering my appreciation for you to have this conversation. I know that, in fact, the way we can also is a bit different from what we used to be. So I hope you will be able to share with us some issues and ideas so that we can adopt. I trust that Rina has explained to you our direction, what we are trying to achieve. We want to be a respected institution for performance and governance, so that is very important in the context of Tabung Haji. And I think all the members of the leadership team are here today, and we are the one that are responsible to steer Tabung Haji towards that outcome. So I think with that, maybe I'll pass on the session to you.
Okay. So I believe you can see the slide. Yeah, Rina? Okay. So first of all, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and to all of you. And first of all, thank you so much to Rina and of course to Tabung Haji for inviting me to be here to deliver these webinar or leadership luncheons series is known within Tabung Haji, and I'm honored to be the first in a series of invited speakers to speak during this forum and on the topic that is very contemporary to all of us, very real as we go through the pandemic over the last 10 months. And the title is Leadership During Times of Crisis and Disruption. Is based on the research that's published internationally of my book, The Leadership in Disruptive Time. And with me, I have Mr. Taranjit Singh, who is my organization, the Disruptive Leadership Institute, and also the Center for Executive Education, a strategic partner in Malaysia, our consulting partner. Mr. Taranjit Singh is the CEO of Quantum Step Advisory, who represent us in Malaysia and also the wider Asia Pacific on various projects. So to start off, let me just just very quick, since Rina did not have a chance, to share very quickly. My background has been, over the last 30 years, been in the management, development, organizational development. Of course, my first 12 years has been in business as a business leader in the healthcare, industry, pharmaceutical industry back in the late 1980 until 1992, where I moved into professional services with Mercury International in Sweden, with Hay Group, with Mercer, with Forum, and now with CE Singapore. So that's my background, and I've written several books. The first book was actually as a contributing author to a book on coaching in Asia in 1999. One of the first 10 executive coaches in Singapore was invited to publish on behalf of the ICF, International Coaching Federation. That was back in 2000, and then And then, of course, into last year, 2019, I wrote a book on Industry 4.0 or IR 4.0. I presented in Malaysia, invited by MEF, National Employees Federation, invited by several other professionals organizations in Malaysia. And of course, my latest book was published in 31st July in New York. It's called Leadership of Disruptive Time, which I'm going to talk about today, which now been adopted by university worldwide as the book for OD and leadership in disruptive times that we are in today. A little bit about the book, just quickly, because you're going to listen to a lot of research, a lot of models, tools that has been endorsed worldwide by organization. And I will not go into the detail. There's a link there. I will send to Rina the copy of the slide. You can go to the link where you can look at all the other endorsements. One of the first two global endorsements from Marshall Goldsmith, the world's #1 leadership thinker, and of course IMD Professor Howard Yu, who is the authority on innovative, disruptive innovation in Europe. So he has both of them endorsed. And closer to home in Malaysia, the book has been endorsed by Dr. Syed Mohammed, the President and CEO of JCOP. JCOP today is using the models, the tools, by the organization, including QSR, QPJ Healthcare, Colin, Johor Land, and many other subsidiaries of JCOP. And that's how Dr. Syed is leading the digital transformation of JCOP Group. And of course, MEF has been very supportive. Both, the council and secretariat have been working with me very closely over the years, and inviting me to speak to Malaysian CEOs, CHROs, business leaders. So I will not go into that. You can go to the link and get more information. So let me start straight away going to the topic. We are living in very, in what you call the Chinese saying, we're living in interesting times. The crisis, the pandemic, has created both a crisis and, of course, depending how you look at it, there are opportunities, and I'll talk about some of the examples from my consulting experience in the US and also in Asia, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, Thailand, Philippines, and so forth. So let me talk about crisis first before we talk about disruptive innovation, talking about what does it mean? What does disruptive innovation mean for carbohydrate? So let me just start by asking you a question. What is the one word that you will associate with a crisis? So because I cannot see the chat box, I'm on a full screen mode. So what I suggest you just pick up on your you can on your what do you call it microphone and speak up. What's the one word that come across to you when you talk about crisis? I believe now you can see me, right? Yeah. So can you hear from anyone? What's the one word? Come on.
Disruption.
Disruption. Okay, good. Come on, more than that. What we feel.
Losses.
Sorry.
Losses.
Resources.
Uncertainty.
Uncertainty, yes. But more than that, look at our experience with the pandemic. The pandemic, COVID-19 is a crisis. It's an unprecedented crisis, and it's a black swan event, and I'll explain in a short while. What does it mean? But look at your own experience. What's one word about crisis? And I've been doing this for the last 2 months worldwide, doing this series of webinars. Words like fear, unknown,
Trouble.
Desperate, trouble, yeah. And sense of loss. For this more than one word, but loss. And there are many words you can use to describe crisis, because it depends from your perspective, from your lens, how you look at this, and your disruptive mindset, and how your mental model, how are you used to see such events that we're experiencing now. The pandemic is one of its kind, and I'll talk more about it. In my book, chapter 2 and chapter 3, it started off actually when talking about a crisis. The book was been written since last year, after July 1999, when the first book was launched, The Leading in Industry 4.0, the publisher, New York, asked me to write about the disruption, which is due to what we call the digital transformation. So what does it mean? What does disruption, the future of work, how does it impact the future workplace? And what does it mean for organization in terms of designing new policies, new strategies? So that was actually July to January. So on the 23rd of January this year, when Wuhan locked down in China because of the pandemic, the publisher contacted me and said, look, hey, perhaps you want to look at, write a couple of chapters about the COVID-19 and how does it impact organizations and how does the digital transformation will play out in a new normal post-COVID? And will it be still a priority? Will it still be an initiative that organizations should focus on? So interestingly, it was a crisis, and I explain in detail, from a VUCA perspective, what it is, and I will talk a little bit more about that in a short while. So, but interestingly, when I do research and look at the Chinese, and talking to some of my Chinese clients in China, and the way they see the pandemic, of course, many of them, when the lockdown, the Chinese government, the central government in Beijing announced the lockdown, it was unprecedented, because during SARS, they did not, at least it's not publicly known exactly what they did during SARS, but the measures taken by the government during SARS is far much different than today, what we see in the COVID-19, the pandemic. Because here is where very drastic, closing down 60 million people in Wuhan was the whole province. It was really unprecedented. And what happened, of course, the rest we know, in terms of the impact of the virus, how it has been spread all over the world. But the way the Chinese, the way they look at it, and this is exactly what it means. They look at, yes, it's a crisis, it's a danger, we need to really address it, but it's also an opportunity. If we do it well, we're able to address it. How can we now relook, and in terms of how we reorganize our business, look at our supply chain and so forth. So they look at things very differently, and this is how we should look at it. But at the same time, I must caution: you must have a sense of optimism. At the same time, you must have what I call grounded to reality. So there's a balance, fine balance between what we call the sense of optimism and reality. So when you look at crisis, so in the book I explain. So in crisis, the way I define it is a major catastrophic event, or series of events, escalating event, that will threaten an organization or business strategic objective, reputation, or viability to succeed, or viability to continue operating. And what we see, a lot of business are suffering. Airlines, even Malaysian Airlines, MAS today, over the last few weeks, you've heard the news, and a lot of businesses in Singapore over the weekend, the oldest retail outlet, 160 years, the Robinsons Group is announced closure the whole of Singapore. So it's a real crisis, and we know it for the last 6 to 12 years. We've seen the impact, the devastating impact, the disruptive impact on operation. So there are two types of crises we need to be mindful. One is a crisis that is routine, is new, is on it, but a routine is something you can expect, like every 10 years. Every 10 years, we expect a fiscal crisis, we expect the economic crisis, which is expected. The cycle, up and down. It's very typical macroeconomics theory will tell you. But what is interesting, we are now facing what we call the unanticipated and novel, the new crisis, which typically can be what is called the black swan event. And black swan event, what are the black swan event? Is an unpredictable event that is beyond what we normally expected, that has severe consequences. And that's what I discovered when doing research globally on the COVID-19 pandemic on chapter 2 and 3 of the book. It clearly laid out the challenge based on WHO, ILO, WTO, IMF, and many other organizations where they see the impact on economies worldwide. on jobs, on societies, and on the financial institution and other institutions in each country. So it really is a black swan event. Another black swan event, probably in 2016, there are two black swan events. One is closer to today when we talk the US election, Donald Trump. Nobody expect, if you go back in reflect in October, this time 2 days before the general US presidential election 2016, Hillary Clinton was expected to win, and I was one of them, and I was proven wrong. That I was, with the American, being the former chairman of the American Chamber in Singapore, of the Human Capital Committee, and together with the ambassadors and many other American community in 2016, we were all, 90% of us, even the Republican, acknowledged that Hillary is going to win. But we all know what happened. Although Hillary won the popular vote, she lost the electoral vote, and Trump was elected. And today, similar things, play out again. So are we going to have another black swan event? So, but even if Trump is re-elected, it's no longer, because we know it's expected. We went through it. It was unprecedented in 2016, but in 2020 we're no longer surprised. We know if Trump is going to win, and we have seen both sides of argument. Yeah. So the 2016 presidential election in the US was a black swan. The other thing in earlier that year, 2016, in June, July, in the UK, the Brexit event was another black swan event, which never been expected. European monetary systems been threatened, looking at how the UK play out the change of government, two prime ministers now, after David Cameron, who called for the referendum. And that is truly a black swan event. Nobody would have thought that the UK is going to pull out of the EU. And that is something that we need to be prepared. Will there be more? There will be more. And maybe closer to home is the collapse of the Barisan Nasional in the 2018 general election in Malaysia. It could be viewed as also a potential black swan event. Nobody expects the UMNO after 60 years in government is going to lose. And of course, then the Pakatan Harapan government. And now a lot of things happening every single day in Malaysia. The news, things are changing so rapidly. So we can see these are things that we can expect. So when we talk about the crisis, the unprecedented crisis, the COVID-19 is indeed one of the biggest challenges that we see that a lot of leaders, political leaders, business leaders use the word unprecedented. And the thing is unprecedented because they do not have a playbook. They do not know how to respond. They do not know what would eventually work. Because there was no prior experience, although the experience with the SARS, the H1N1, H1N5, some of the viruses in the US is not as pronounced, as disruptive as the COVID-19. So the word unprecedented being used because people do not know what they do not know, and this is the challenge. And I don't blame them. I don't blame the political leaders, and I wrote several articles about this internationally about the lack of, it's not lack of will. I think they are determined to but there's a lack of multilateral leadership, as WHO Secretary General, Director General talk about putting, and UN, WHO Director General and the UN Secretary General talk about how countries should come together. And still today, and with US pulling out, China take leadership position in driving the global management of crisis and so forth. You see things are very interesting from a geopolitical perspective. So what does it mean for us as an organization, as business? The disruptive effect of the COVID-19, as we have seen, is going to continue. It's going to continue, and I do not believe with the discovery, and this is what I wrote in the book, even with the discovery of the vaccine, you cannot. The challenge will be, it's not about vaccine. Vaccine does not resolve the issue of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's the vaccination process, is the implementation and rolling out of the vaccination process. Who get what, which country get first. And it's a huge issue. Today, you look at the commitment to the vaccine, allocation of vaccine, world vaccine production. about more than 55% at one stage, 55% of the world vaccine production has been secured by the 80% of the major economic power. So what does it mean? What is going to happen? Talking about ethics, global, ethical practices within the pandemic. So there's a lot of business issues and a lot of things are still unknown. So my point is, be prepared to ride out this pandemic crisis, the impact until end of next year. Yeah, probably the middle of next year, you see things are improving. Get down, being cascade down to the ground, to the first responder, and to those who need it most, and then to the public. It will take some time. Yeah? So this is the challenge that we're going to. So be prepared. The disruption to business is going to continue until at least first half of next year. So this pandemic, as I said, is a black swan event. So when I talk to a lot of CEOs, I interviewed as part of my consulting in the US, my US organization, the Executive Development Associate, which I'm also hold concurrently the managing director. So we have a few clients worldwide that we do consulting to help them to restructure as part of M&A, when they restructure and how to put the organization. And as we interview, we talk to the employee, talk to the leadership team. There's a sense of loss, disorientation, and I use the word strong emotional disturbance. Now, what does it mean? At times like this, even in Malaysia, talking to some of my clients, because the emotional well-being of the employee is number one, very important. How can organizations pay attention to support the employee who are going through an upheaval, never been seen before? Jobs are being lost. They see around them, their family, friends, even colleagues who are impacted. So what does it mean? What can you do as a business leader, as a C-suite leader, CEO, on the board? So on Thursday, I've been invited by the African one of the university in Kenya, Mombasa, to speak to CEOs of African companies on the 4th. And these are all the chairman of the board and CEOs. And their main concern is exactly this: they are not as the impact to the business may not be as great because I would say they're still feeling the impact. But what is disturbing is the emotional state of one of the things that I hear in Africa. I mean, I'm sure in many parts, even in our Asia, but people are fearful of the unknown. What does it mean? And that creates a lot of stakeholders, not only employee, investors, shareholders, and so forth. So the question is, how do CEOs, C-suite leaders like all of you here in this forum, how do you respond? So the challenge is this. The biggest challenge is the number one challenge that I would advise you to think seriously is that this is one of the unanticipated crises, as I mentioned, as opposed to what we call the usual routine crisis like the financial crisis. The financial crisis, on average, is about 10 to 12 years. You can see a downside, because of, as I said, the macroeconomy. But this is something and be prepared. There will be more to come. More pandemic. There are much more. There was a program on Channel News Station last night talking about the discovery of more dangerous virus that is being now investigated. So my point is, this is going to get tougher, going to get much more difficult. So you're going to overwhelm. So one of the things as a C-suite leader, all of you need to re-examine your contingency mitigation technique, including your BCP, business continuity planning, disaster recovery, as part of your risk management program. So you need to relook, and reassess whether are these still relevant. How do you put in place a BCP in the age of disruption? That is the word, business continuity planning in the age of disruption. What are the key success factors? How does Marriott does it? How do Procter & Gamble put in place their disaster recovery in times of, or if you look at Microsoft, very successful. Microsoft during the pandemic because Satya Nadella anticipated. Of course, Bill Gates being on the board and Bill Gates being the founder. And Bill Gates already talked about this disaster pandemic coming in as early as 2015. from Africa after the Ebola crisis. The US experienced the Ebola crisis during President Obama's time. And Bill Gates anticipated, and he published it. In my book, I talk about that and why people do not hear from Bill Gates, do not listen. And Bill Gates also warned in July that there will be another bigger pandemic coming, and we have to be prepared. When looking at all this crisis, so my team in the US, myself, we look at the financial crisis. Actually, it started off in the Asian financial crisis. Most of you know, it started in Thailand, Malaysia back in 98, 97, 98. Then we look at my consultants out there, the coaches, consultants in the US and Asia. We have been involved, of course, I've been involved personally, not only in the Asian crisis, but the global financial crisis in 2008, 2009, where a lot of financial services firm banks are impacted. And of course, I was involved in the dot-com crisis in 2000, the SARS in 2003, and so forth. So what we look at is successful leader. Those who have been very successful in many crises. There's six behaviors that we can see very clearly. Number one, during time of crisis, they are able to articulate and communicate clearly. People need to be heard. People want to hear you. Leadership needs to be upfront. You need to walk the talk, be purposeful, listen more. And this is missing, very sadly, very much missing. A great example, and I think Rina or no, I'm not sure, I've given you the link to my series of video for this webinar, and look for the video by Marriott CEO and how he is able to communicate, even going through cancer treatment at the time when the crisis was hit, and how he go in front of the camera talking to thousands of his staff to reassure them of what's to come, why they have to take measures to close some of the properties. And again, this is very good example. Look at how communication crisis. Of course, resilience, which I'll talk more about that later. Intelligence using big data and using AI or machine learning or deep learning, or artificial general learning. I mean, AI to the extreme where we're talking about using in autonomous cars and so. So you need to be able to use those resources, technology to help you to make those decisions. Especially during times of disruption, it's very important. And of course, you need to shift your mental model, adopt a growth mindset, ability to see, as I said, have a sense of optimism, learning agility, learn, unlearn, relearn, and of course, be inspiring, build trust, because people are fear about what is the outcome of the unknown outcome. So all of you as leaders, business leaders, including the CEO, again the chairman of the board, have to seem to be there to be a pillar of support to the employee, to the stakeholders, and they need to see that clearly demonstrated. And lastly, set the recovery path. Where we were, yes, we have been through tough times. We have gone through so many difficult, challenges over the last 10 months. So where are we going now? Where are we heading? Where do we want to go? So people have a sense of hope. There's an alignment between what you want to do and what they feel they should do. So there must be a continuous effort of communication. So let me just pause here. I just want to make sure, because this is very important. There are three other models I will be talking. So the other two more models, but let me just pause here. Any question from anyone? Because this is one of the first model I'm going to share with you, the framework. Can you all still see me? I cannot see anyone because I'm just on a full screen mode. Dato?
Well, one of my observations during the pandemic is people purposely want to demonstrate that they have done enough or adequately dealing with the issue, which sometimes may not necessarily be the right thing to do. We have similar observation when you look at how leaders around the world reacting to this pandemic.
Yeah. So, sorry, what's the question again?
Well, sometimes people tend to overreact to the situation, where sometimes they just want to be seen to be doing like what others do. So is it something that you observe during this pandemic? Because for example, like when one of the certain staff member got got the virus, and people close the whole building, get people not to work for 1 week, that sort of stuff. It looks very heroic, but does it really make sense on a long-term basis?
Yeah. So if I hear you, Dr. Nick, is Dr. Nick, all right? Is it?
Nick will do.
Okay. So your question is, I think there are two types of response that I've seen, even recently, as far back as last week in Singapore at a bank. You're right. So there are two reactions. One is you have a leader who very rare, very few leader who's very calm and collected and able, I said, to articulate and demonstrate trust, the way they communicate and reassure the employee. So first and foremost, in times like this, in pandemic, I'm talking about pandemic. There are many other crises. In this pandemic, public health comes first. What does it mean? It means the safety of the employee, safety of the customers who come into the to the business, or safety of the business partners, contractors, whatever. So safety comes first, public health. And there's no compromise. There's no compromise. That is number one. And that's why I think Malaysia score high in terms of Dato. And now it's Tan Sri, I think, Dr. Nur Hisham, who have a lot of respect. And I think he's doing a marvelous job. Of course, under political pressure and all that, but generally he's doing a great job. So the example that you're given in organization, unfortunately, I would say about 90% of leaders behave that way. Now, why? The question is why? They retract. They are more reactive. They are fear. I mean, basically, they do not know. They say we all have different experience, in different type of crisis. Because this pandemic, I was super fortunate because in Singapore, we went through Singapore, Hong Kong, Taiwan, went through, and China, of course, number one, during SARS. So we have a lot of experience. So I was right in the middle of SARS because, my father was hospitalized during SARS and for 6 months, even after the SARS. So I went through and experienced it, knowing the doctors and with talking to them. So I can understand. And it was very, very tough time. So not many people gone through that. So that's number one. So the question is, do I blame? No, because as I said, they do not know how to respond. So what do we do? The best is to retreat. So either they say, fight or flight. So either you confront, be courageous, take on the challenge and respond as a leader would, or you take flight, move out, disappear. And as a client, one of my clients in Indonesia, one of them is in Thailand, another one in Indonesia. So one was in April, another one was in May. Again, the CEO announced to the staff, look, we're going to cut down, we are part of a global team, US company, we're going to cut down. It's an Indonesian subsidiary of a large American MNC. And he announced, and then within 10 minutes, he handed over to head of HR and the COO, and he disappeared. And those days, travel, in April, in Asia, travel was not restricted. So he flew back. He flew back to his home in Singapore. So the HR contacted me, asking for advice, what to handle with. And I know the CEO. So he was a little bit fortunate that I've interacted because I was coaching one of the COO of the organization. So I called him up and I said, what happened? And of course, privately, he shared with me his concern. He was not prepared. So Dato, so what you say is correct. That's one way. So unfortunately, that's how many leaders reacted during the pandemic. But what we want an example is the Marriott leader, Ferguson, where he responded clearly, articulate, face head on, be truthful, be authentic, and if you do not know, say you do not know. If you do not know the answer, you need to be very clear to the employee, I do not know. So you need to be authentic in that self rather than try to give a false sense of hope. So I do see, as I said, about 10% are those authentic, very, the courageous leader. Then you have about 90%, most of them at different level are more, wait and see how, and rather, don't ship the boat, wait for the board or wait for the CEO to announce. And then you have CEO who doesn't know what to do. And they said, this is the problem. And then at the end of the day, it's about be truthful, and employees will understand. Employees will forgive you, will understand. They will be with you. You can rally them if you come out authentically. Dato', do I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. So is there any other comment, any question? So among the crises, the CRISIS, which one do you think is the most important? Let me just ask this question. Actually, that's not in the quiz. I got 4 more quiz questions, but let me just ask you, which one is more important, do you think? I can tell you one of them is very, very, very extremely important.
S, adopt or shift mental model. Adopt growth mindset.
Who is that?
Oh, Fawaz.
Sorry?
Fawaz.
Muhammad Fawaz.
Yes, that's me.
Yeah, you must be the investment guy, investment. So you're right. So actually, you are. I don't know how you know the answer. I don't know about the rest. But anyway, you are right. So actually, when I wrote this model, when I developed this model with my team at that time, we have not finished the book. It was at that time we talked about shift mental model based on Peter Senge work. And of course, later you see the latest after. Just before a month before the book was published, we put together the model and we call it the disruptive mental agility. Disruptive mental agility is very important. You cannot talk about communication, you cannot about resilience, you cannot be calm, you cannot be inspiring. All those things cannot happen if you're not able to shift your mental model. You cannot be able to tell yourself, look, I need to do things differently. This is unprecedented. I need to think critically. What do I need to do differently now? How can I leverage and mobilize my team? Who do I go to? How can you work with your competitors? You call it co-opetition. Compete and collaborate in terms of crisis. Who do you go to? And everyone has to. And this is very important. And to do that, you are right. We need a disruptive mental mindset, or agility, or competency, which I will talk about towards the end, the new model. Okay. Now, so let me just quickly. The next few slides I will move very quickly because this is more you can read from the slide. You can get when you get the book. I think Puan Rina is looking at getting the book, so you can probably read more in detail. So I would like to ask you one word that you associate with disruption. So let me hear from the rest. Samsul, Ahmad Shariman, Rosita, Mustafa Kamal, Dato Sri Said Saleh. Let me hear from the rest. What is one word? Come on.
Discomfort.
Sorry?
Discomfort.
Discomfort. Okay, what else? Very good. So, what else?
Stressful times.
Sorry?
Stressful.
Resourceful.
Stress.
Oh, stressful. Okay.
Interruption.
Interruption. Yeah, very good. Come on, disruption. Like this morning, I went through a disruption, a very disruptive event. Setting up this, I've been using Zoom all over the world when I do webinar. About less than 10% of my clients use Teams. But, today it's a very disruptive event this morning when trying to set up. So frustration. Some people fear, anger. Yeah. Some people, word disruption, you're talking about the state of unknown. Yeah? So there are many ways to describe, but the Cambridge Dictionary, the business context, I'm talking about from a business, not societal, but talking from a business context. Disruption is actually completely changing the traditional way of working or the industry operate, but it's using new methods of technology. So that's very simple. Look at Cambridge Dictionary. So in my book, I explain what disruption is because that's the key theme of the book. I said disruption in its various forms, there are many forms, can happen at any time. In any market segment or any industry, no one is immune. No one is immune to the COVID-19 pandemic. Whether you've been disrupted, the outcome is positive or negative. 99% of people will experience it negatively initially, but the disruption can fundamentally change the way you do business, the way we live. And it's going to change the way, and technology, the disruptive technology that we know, today has changed. And I'll talk about those technologies. So if you look at Clayton Christensen, the professor from Harvard, who wrote a book called Innovator's Dilemma, and Clayton described it as a process by which a product or service take root initially in a very simple application. They follow the incumbent, they go into the market. As an incumbent player, the market leader move up into different segment and try to go to more lucrative market, more profitable market. This smaller disruptor entrepreneurial organization will come in and disrupt the market leader. And this is what we call about disruptive innovation. Okay, to give you a real example, okay, this is a challenge. The challenge all of you need to. Of course, Tabung Haji is a bit different. You have the I would say, correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, Tabung Haji in government owned, and you're doing a service or a social noble, providing a service to the Muslim, ummah, community, and arrange for Haji. Very interestingly, of course, we talk investments, and so forth to generate the income, but you don't face competition. Of course, unlike the only competition you face is the private sector, private Hajj operators and tours and so forth. But as an organization, Tabung Haji is a little bit different. But if you look at Sanjabi, Maybank, you look at Petronas and many other players in Malaysia, the challenge is how do you continue to reinvent yourself? And the disruptive innovation is very important to many commercial organizations, because once you become complacent, once you establish yourself at that level, then how do you then ensure that you remain relevant to the other market? And that's the challenge according to Clayton Christensen in his book, The Innovative Dilemma. He says that most of these companies are very successful. The Citibank, you look at United Airlines, many other, they become so complacent, they forgot about the other smaller segment which they used to serve. And this is where the disruptors come in, and with their disruptive innovation product and services will take advantage. That leads to my third poll. I'm going to ask you, in my book, I talk about the case study of Netflix versus Blockbuster and Uber versus the taxi. These are the two example case study of chapter one. So based on what I just shared about the Clayton Christensen definition of what disruptive innovation is, coming from a lower segment and take on the incumbent who's more established with new innovative services. So which one do you think is truly a disruptor? A disruptor? Netflix or Uber? Uber, okay, one person. Who else? Come on, let me just shout your name. I cannot see the box, so I cannot see the response. So I will hear the consensus. Uber. Who else? What about Ahmad Shariman? Where are you?
Netflix.
Samsul Kamal? Sorry? Netflix. Dato' Marina?
Uber.
Okay.
All of the above.
All the above? There got such thing all the above. The answer is which one? Only one. What about Zul Effendi? Are you there, Zul? Zul?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, so which one is it? Uber.
Yeah.
So the answer is Netflix. It's not Uber. 90% of my participants would be like most of you here, would think Uber is the disruptive innovator. It's not. Why? Let me explain very simply. Netflix is disruptive. So when you probably know Netflix today, the Netflix of today is not what Netflix was 20 years ago, 25 years ago. Netflix used to be a what we call a mail-in subscription and postal. You go in and get your video by mail, and they were fixing head on the established player. Market leader was Blockbuster. At one point, Blockbuster or Netflix offered Blockbuster to acquire them at 50 million US, and that was a big mistake that Blockbuster did not accept that. And of course, today Blockbuster is gone, doesn't exist anymore. But what Netflix did was they go into the smaller segment that Blockbuster, which was focusing on higher market, more margin. They do not serve those customers who want variety, who want on-demand, low price. So what Netflix did was at that time appeal to this, not only the smaller, initially a smaller market who wants this on-demand video streaming, and then of course then they go after the larger customers of Blockbuster by offering much more wider, using AI, using artificial intelligence, the algorithm to make it so customized. They know what you want. When you're on Netflix, they'll tell you, because you watch a movie, let's say you watch Friends, maybe you want to watch, another series, whatever. So, you watch Pretty Woman, maybe you want to watch another movie similar, Julia Roberts. So they give you that, they understand. So this is very true. Netflix is truly a disruptor. While Uber is an innovator. So what Uber did is they offer a more convenient way to book taxi. That's it. Because people get frustrated at the calling and getting public taxi. It was so frustrating sometimes, and they're not responding very well. So what Uber did was they used the same market, after the same market, they provide a platform using technology to your smartphone, because by then, about 10 years ago, smartphone became so common, and Uber did that very well. But it is not a disruptive innovator as what Clayton Christensen defined, because they do not go after the same market segment and offer something better, cheaper. Interestingly, they disrupt the taxis. They did disrupt the industry, but as a player, they did not. They're not a disruptive innovator in terms of service. Of course, today, Uber in the US, not many parts of the country, in Asia, in Malaysia, Singapore, Grab is more established. Of course, Grab disrupted Uber in Asia, in China. In China is Didi, the Uber lost to another Chinese player. And in Singapore, Malaysia, Vietnam, Thailand, Grab has been more. In Indonesia is Gojek. And then Gojek has now moved out of Indonesia to Singapore, Malaysia, and many other countries. And so this thing about disruptive innovation, so you need to think the customers expect that. So understand your target customers, know your customers. So customer centricity, customer intimacy is so very important. So if you look at the disruptive technology, you look at worldwide, McKinsey published I give you the link there, in 2013, McKinsey published a very interesting report. So you're talking about that in 2013, which was 7 years ago. Almost all the disruptive technology you see in this slide here are becoming a reality, but not in 2013 or 2012 when the report was drawn up and published in 2013 May. But the impact of the disruptive technologies was estimated, but today I think it's far much greater. Okay, we look at mobile internet, gone. It's already become, now 5G. 5G is becoming in the US, of course, coming to Asia, in Japan, in Korea, in China. We have the artificial knowledge work. The future work is a reality. Now we talk about robot working with people side by side. Internet of Things, which all the devices are wired up and interconnected. Internet of Systems, in iOS industrial, Internet system, where all the different devices, systems in the factory, in the plant, automobile, for example, it's all connected, internet, IIoT, Internet of Things, IIoS. Now, of course, cloud computing, which, you've seen that in all. Amazon is one of the best, Amazon Web Services. Of course, we all use, those of you who use Dropbox, it's becoming very common cloud. HP, Dell, Microsoft. Of course, the biggest player is Google. Google Cloud Services and Amazon. These are two biggest. Now, of course, we have Dell and others. And now HP announced they're going to break again. HP was, as you know, broken into two, and they're going to break again into the cloud services and into the other solution services. So you see a lot of companies, not very new. Advanced robotics, autonomous vehicle, Google. We know about Tesla, and the rest. So my point is, this is something is here to stay. And even you have seen the impact on organizations that use it effectively, but reality is people are very slow to accept. So the question is, you need to start examining your business processes, your customers, your Haji, your pilgrims, your members. What is it they want? How do you want to be transacted? What is it can we do? And it doesn't have to be very complicated technology. But focus on your customers and use the technology that makes sense to your customer. So what's the challenge to all of you here in this room? The challenge is how to navigate this near insurmountable challenges from looking at your business model. So you need to reinvent your business model. What can you do to change, reinvent? And one of the challenges that we tend to remain and stick to what we used to do. And earlier, Dato' Nick asked a question. I think this is a problem, exactly what happened to a lot of companies, a lot of leaders. And in Malaysia, Singapore, US, even when I was doing my colleague in the US was telling some of their clients, and every week when we have a sharing session, about knowledge sharing session, and one of the things I hear this continuously is that some of these leaders do not know what to do, and they're not open, as I said, the mind to accept and reverse mentoring. And this is a concept I want to advocate to all of you. So in my book, I talk about reverse mentoring. And we talk about mentoring, it used to be the older, more established leader, right? Provide support or guidance, career guidance to the young. But that's the mentor-mentee concept. But today, reverse mentoring is going for the Gen Y, Gen Z, those born between 1995 to 2010, which is Gen Z or digital natives, or the Gen Y born 1980 to 94. Ask them for help. They understand technology. They understand the new reality. They understand what is the impact of technology on lives, on business, on the workplace. The future of work is going to be so different. The future of work is going to be so different in the next 10, 50 years. If you look at the 2030, and the gig economy, the gig workers, the contingent workforce is going to be so different. Are you able to accept the new deal of work? The way the employment laws are so archaic, many countries, including Malaysia, Singapore, need to change. You're not able to respond. And this is the problem we are facing worldwide, because the lack of responsiveness by both government and business leaders, both government and business leader, to solve many of the challenges we face today in business. So start reassessing your mental model, look at your business strategy. What do we need to do to ensure survival? But the bad news that I would say the biggest hit will be the small business enterprises or SME, which is going to as high as 70 to 80% of them is going to be out of business in one form or another. There could be a huge number, and the SME worldwide are traditionally the biggest employer, biggest contributor to the GDP. So you're going to look at a lot of business, and it's going to impact the economy in a very big way. Whether Malaysia, Singapore, even in US, many of the SME look at retail, F&B. You look at small, services, providing the usual whatever household needs and so forth. So there can be a lot of this company will be out. So now the question is this: knowing what I just shared with you, the challenges, the difficulty, what we have seen. Now the question is this: what would be one skill or competency, the behavior or competency that you think is crucial to resolve all these challenges that we are talking about, which are resulting from the disruptive process? So only one, name me one competency. Imran, I've not heard from Imran. Mustaqim?
Adapt.
So what is the competency?
One skill is we have to adapt to any changes.
Adapt. Oh yeah. Okay. Who's that? Imran?
Mustaqim.
Mustaqim. Imran, what do you think?
Looking forward.
I think it's agility.
Agility. Very
Yeah,
good. Who is this? Who is this?
Rina.
Rina. Very good. Okay. What else?
Perseverance.
Sorry?
Perseverance.
Perseverance. Okay. Badrul. Where are you, Badrul? Badrul, you are the chief risk officer. So what do you think is the most important skill? Sorry? Badrul? Noris Malili?
I think the knowledge.
Okay, last one. Samsul Kamal. So you are the CTO. So what do you think the competency is critical?
Basically, need to change the mindset to automate everything.
Change mindset. Okay. Actually, let me share with you what I did in the book. I interviewed and looked at the working with DBS back in the I worked with DBS 3 times, back in '97, then the different CEO, then 2006 when Jackson Tai took over, left, and then Piyush Gupta, the current CEO. So, and then of course, as far back as 4 years ago, so if you look at DBS, I can share you a lot. In my book, I have a whole section about chapter 5 about DBS culture and how they manage disruption. And of course, I also look at Starbucks, Howard Schultz, how he transformed the Starbucks using the digital flywheel concept. Yes? And of course, Microsoft, Satya Nadella, the third CEO of Microsoft, how he transformed Microsoft. And also, all these are case studies you can find in the book. Three major case studies. Apart from the Netflix and the Uber example, chapter 1. So this is chapter 5, chapter 6 of the book. So what I did was I put together. So I look at all these leaders and of course other leaders worldwide, and we every 2 years, my parent company, the Executive Development Associate, so we did survey, and we are now into the 2021 survey. So what we did, we look at the benchmark competencies of leaders who are very successful that we coach, in terms of the disruptive competency. Number one is what we call disruptive mentality. Okay, it's about being able to be innovative driven, be able to look at things, what others can see, and how do you challenge your way of thinking and to innovative driven. It's not easy, because to do that takes a lot of patience, practice, and you can develop. The good news is that it can be developed, the disruptive mentality. The second is about visionary entrepreneurial skill. Even within organization, of course we call it, some books call it intrapreneurial. But basically it's the same thing about creativity, about able to envision the future, able to bring people together. How do you impact and influence people to make things look differently? How do you reassure? That's what the Marriott CEO was trying to do. That's what Satya Nadella is trying to do when during time of disruption. Then the third competence is called cognitive readiness or critical thinking. It's about mental agility, like many of you mentioned just now. This is similar to the crisis model we talked about earlier. So we see there's some similarity, in terms of, but this is a suite of competency about being focused, about again communication and many others. There are 7 sub-competency. Again, the book explains in very detail what are these competencies? Then number 4 is the resilience, as many of you mentioned, the change agility, adaptability, and how do you manage, or what we call a very high AQ, adversity quotient. How do you bounce back very quickly when you face with failure? How do you able to accept, and it's not easy, how do you able to accept failure and bounce quickly so that you can bring your people together in times of disruption? And then you have what Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella did very well is the demonstrate empathy and social skills. How do you bring people? How do you communicate? How do you bring people together when times of crisis, when people fear about the unknown? People do not know what does it mean. And this is very important. And lastly, whatever you talk about, whatever it is in business, in any organization, all of our, even NGO, non-profit, government, there has to be KPI. There has to be some form of metrics for success. There has to be ability to drive for success. So you need to have results agility. How do you bring people? How do you look at what does the new normal looks like? How do you measure that? How do you put in the performance management indicator? What are some of the metrics that you're going to lead the team in the new normal or the next normal? So the HR role is very important, but HR is only enabler. Now let me make it very clear that HR role is only enabler. It's your responsibility, the CEO and the C-suite, everyone's responsibility to manage and to transform the organization with the help of HR, with the support, or HR has to step up. The CHRO and the HR team has now to play a very important role of that of a business partner, strategic business partner. How do the CHRO have to work with the board, with the CEO to understand their direction? What are the talent issues? What are the critical leadership succession issues? And there are people who are not fit, The reality is there will be people who will not fit into the new environment, to the new normal. So what do you do with them? That's tough. Because you need to, and many people do not know how to do it. They know they need to do something, but they do not know how to. But you need to do it with empathy and make sure you do not violate both organizational justice and the procedural justice of how to manage those situations. And that's very important. We have seen during the last 6 months in cases where people have been retrenched, been redundant, but the way things have been done, much to be desired. So if you look at those whole things, so these 6 are the latest competency. Taranji and I just finished working with an organization where we in Malaysia, where we help them to craft the new competency model. And this is the latest, this is benchmark again, best practice organization, best in class organization worldwide. Okay. Any question before I move on and conclude? You can ask more questions, but I would rather, since you're on this slide, I would rather you ask questions because it's easier if you have any question. No? So this is more for HR. So Rina, you need to look at this more in detail. Of course, in the book, I explain more in detail each of these competency. Now, I won't go into this, but this is a subset of the number 3. Okay, in number 3, the cognitive readiness. So what happened was in 2019, I mentioned to you my first book, I was looking in depth about what is cognitive readiness in the IR 4.0. So there's some relevance. So I'm just showing you so what I did was I include this also in the 2020 book. So show you some relevance of the continuity of some of the competency. Okay, of the emotional, social intelligence, mental model. So number 1, metacognition, attention control, being present when you are in crisis, our strategic thinking skills, sense making, intuition using gut feeling, which is not in crisis, but this is very important. In gut feeling, you need to base on your experience, what you have done before. Sometimes data cannot give you everything, so you need to use your experience and problem solving using analytical, critical thinking skills. And some of us are very good at this, some are not. Some of us are very good in able to look at things beyond what others see. So something is a gift, and it's a competency that can be developed. So it's not that you cannot, but it takes some time. It can be developed using certain tools, like RAD tools, critical thinking tools that we design into programs for clients. Adaptability, again, this is similar to what we talked about earlier, agility, and of course, lastly, communication, similar to what we talked about earlier. So there's some similarity. Okay, so you see the models, it is consistent over time. And this model, Paragon 7, was developed by EDA since 2016 report, a global executive development report. You can go in, there's all the links and resources all in the book. You can look at it. So let me just, so it's 1:10. So let me just pause here. Hear you, any questions, your perspective, discussion point, challenge me, and let's have some interactive dialogue. So who has not?
Nick here again. If you look at COVID-19, I think you mentioned earlier about this pandemic may last until end of next year, when not only the when we are able to vaccinate most of our population, but my observation during the whole episode since it started here late last year and when it became more serious, things tends to evolve. It's not that the pandemic came in one single form and it remains like that. I think our understanding of the pandemic, our observation on how people react to the pandemic, not just in our own country but all over the world, I think that helps us to understand more about this and being able to project what next. I think will be very critical, and hence sometimes you may not necessarily react like what others do because you feel that you have to keep your bullets until you need them when you really need them. So is that a kind of not that innovative but more pragmatic approach in dealing with this uncertainty?
So is that Dato' Nick?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So Dato', see, the thing is that I personally, I think you're right. Things could evolve. So, honestly, the results of the U.S. presidential election has much impact on who's the next president, and what does it mean for the global business and the support for WHO. The collaboration with Chinese, instead of Trump, for example, keep on calling China is a China virus, it's China epidemic, and the trade war with China, with the business with Huawei, TikTok, with many other potential business realignment, the geopolitical realignment in Europe with the NATO in East Asia. So what is happening is that depending on who's the next president. Of course, if it's Biden, things would be better for the business because he has committed to re-admit into WHO, committed to be re-engaged to Asia. I'm not sure whether the TPP will be resurrected. I'm not sure, but he is committed to Asia. He's committed to be tough with China, and China need to be contained to a certain extent, but he's able to have a dialogue, more productive dialogue, not antagonistic. He's willing to work with the people in Europe. So what does it mean? It means that they're going to be very different, way the world is going to respond and react and manage the fallout of the pandemic, even after vaccine has been found. And US wants to take the lead from China. China, see, because there's a vacuum. When what has happened in the geopolitical, even in Southeast Asia, when Trump leaves the TPP, the minute his first executive order he signed was to revoke President Obama's decision to join the TPP, and that created a lot of problems, and Chinese was happy. The Chinese were happy because that gives them an opportunity to take leadership and control, and you know the rest. So what does it mean? Again, Dato', I'm optimistic if the situation on businesses on the ground, what's going to happen, because we are all interdependent. We need a multilateral leadership, as I mentioned, to manage the pandemic impact of businesses. Right now, US is, because of inward looking, they are, very nationalistic. Their priority to them is only about it's all about US. Trump only concerned about himself and about the American. So what will happen next year? I believe the first 6 months, depending who's the president. I think, as I said, the vaccine is not. There are two vaccine in 2 to 3 modern GSK, Sanofi. So, but 2 to 3. China is one, 2 in China, 1 in Russia, which is again not tested, and of course a few in Europe ongoing. What has happened is the vaccine will be tested depending on FDA and the other tests. So by end of November, end of this month, or early next month, Dr. Fauci has openly says that there's expect at least 1 or 2 would be given preliminary approval. Yeah? But they don't wait for that. They already start manufacturing. For the last 2 months, most of the vaccine China manufacturers already start manufacturing. Okay, so the question is to get it out now. It's not going to solve the issue. Airline, the industry, travel industry, tourism, all these things are not going to be, the economic impact is not going to be reversed. No. Business is going to be impacted. Harsh travel. I don't think the Saudi, of course, alhamdulillah, we can see things are opening up better in both, in Makkah and, in Medina, things are much better. Masjidil Haram, Masjid Nabawi, you see people coming in. But Umrah is now becoming slowly being introduced. But the Hajj, I'm not sure the next year Hajj would be, maybe on a smaller scale. I don't know. My point is this: so we need to be prepared for the unknown, Dato. So for Tabung Haji, realistically, the contingency measures, the scenario A, B, C, what are the actions that you need to put in place, you and your leadership team? And of course, this is a lot of political decision by the Saudi government, your government leaders, how they negotiate, how they dialogue, and all these things are still unknown. We do not know. Would there be a change of government in Malaysia in the next 90 days? If there is, then what's going to happen? Policies, direction. So these are the things that, in my view, a lot of unknown. But I'm optimistic. As I said, even if Trump won re-elected, there will be slow progression to the new normal, because the priority for him is still the American. So what does it mean for Malaysia, Singapore, and Asia? What is going to be? There'll be more contentious with the Chinese. The South China Sea, there will be potentially a war. And I'm not ruling out there'll be a war. If Trump may, if he wins the election, he can be more dominant than what you see today. He wants that. If the last 4 years is an indication of what we went through of Trump's administration, just imagine the next 4 years under Trump, it's going to be so upheaval. And we talk, the word VUCA has a new meaning. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. It's going to be a whole new meaning. And I'm going to write a book. One of the things I'm thinking about, the publishers asked me, so if there's a new Trump is re-elected, what does it mean? From the geopolitical business perspective. It's very interesting to really, I've been following very closely. Yeah. So we don't know, Dato. We don't know. I'm not really optimistic if Trump is re-elected. So a lot of decisions in Asia depend on China, respond to the US, depend who's the new president. Yeah. Okay. Any other question? I've not heard from Dato Sri Syed Saleh. Is it? So Dato Sri. Yeah, I was mentioning about Hajj, opening of Hajj, and about, maybe you can share everything. What are the contingency plan? If you start thinking about that, what does it mean? Because being the ED for Hajj, I'm sure that's something on your mind every day. Sleepless night.
Hello. Yeah. It's very frustrating actually, because there's a lot of things that is very uncertain, and there is a deadline for Hajj. There is a deadline every year. Come 9th of Zulhijjah, that would be the day that everyone will be at the Arafah. So we are working within a certain time frame. That's why when we look at how we are facing this disruptive era, our energy, where should we spend our energy? We can continue to have all these various permutations of scenarios. But then again, to what extent are we going to spend our time and effort on that? And at the same time, we cannot move because I'm talking about harsh operation per se, whereby we just have to wait and see. Because it's a decision of two governments. Like, for instance, in Umrah, the Saudi has allowed certain numbers of people to go for Umrah, but our government has yet to decide. Same thing when it comes for Hajj, the two governments will have to sit down and decide on the Hajj. It's going to be done next year. But at the same time, we ourselves would have to come up with all sorts of permutations and endless permutation, in fact, on what it can be and what it could be. So, as you know, that Double Haji, we provide services door to door, basically A to Z, all sorts of services. So, I think to a certain extent, this Hajj operation is like it's gone back to zero base, whereby everybody before this Double Haji or Malaysia is in a way stand head and shoulders above the rest. But now I think the playing field is level to everybody. It's up to the country where there is a new SOP or procedures. Then it's up to us, the agility, as you were mentioning, to navigate within the new procedures. So then everybody is now at the same level. It's up to us, Malaysia, to be proactive enough to what you call that, adjust ourselves according to the new norms. I think it's a question or just a comment.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sri. I think this is a challenge for Tabung Haji. I am following very closely the political development, of course, in Malaysia, because my client, quite a number have been involved in the Malaysian, business since 1985. So it's quite very long time. And my point is, if I look at what's happening today with the political, uncertainty, that also means that you're right. So two governments, the Saudi government and the Malaysian government. Of course, with the change of government, the change of priority, change of a lot of things are still unknown. So it will be very tough for Tabung Haji. And of course, we doa yang terbaik. We ask for the best. Inshallah, things will turn out. But we all know the famous hadith about Rasulullah saying that you can dua, but you have to start also planning. Correct? We have to plan. So we have to start planning. Dr. Nick, yourself, and the rest of the leadership team. Yeah, we have to dua for the best outcome for Allah SWT to grant our success of our dua. Inshallah dikabulkan. But what our plans? What's option A? What's option B? Option C? What are the contingency plan? And how do we communicate to our? Do you call it members? People who are investing in Tabung Haji, are they called members, or how do you call them? Not clients, members.
Yes.
Depositors.
Depositors. So yeah, depositors. But how do we communicate? How do we reassure them? And a lot of things need to be done. We do not know what we do not know, but we need to make sure there is a continuous dialogue, information, and this is why communication is very important. Yeah, to our depositors. Okay, any other question? Anyone else? No? Dato' Marina, I didn't hear you mention just now earlier? Or Mirzala? Okay.
I personally, Prof, I'm more worried. How do I face when the vaccine is ready, And are we ready of what exactly it will change us another new form or new norm? I that part I
In what way?
personally.
Sorry, who is
Yeah,
this?
yeah.
Who is this? Marina, Dr.
Mozilla, yeah.
Marina. So in what way,
Yeah, though we have plan A, plan B, plan C, a lot of uncertainties. If you ask me just now, what is my thinking about all this? Yeah.
See, the vaccine is, as I said, is a cure, or is to prevent, and community. What we are concerned is the community spreading. So we need to offer lives. Those who are the most vulnerable, the elderly, those who have underlying disease. Those are
Yeah.
that is the purpose. The vaccine has to be ensure to be made available to prevent further death. Yeah. Now, what does it mean for Tamu Haji? Because people who's going to Hajj must have that. I think Saudi government going to make it, will have definitely one of the regulations. The question you should ask is, by the time the vaccine is available, will the virus mutate in a form
Yeah.
that would make the vaccine redundant? Now, this is what scientists are worrying. Because we already seen the evolution of the vaccine, evolution of the COVID-19, the nCoV-19 or novel coronavirus 19, the scientific name, is evolving. Research in China, in Singapore, in France, in Germany, US, different centers of excellence in researching, they have found that it does evolve. Yeah, but the question is, it's not that many of the newer cases are still the old, the old original virus. So that's a good news. Well, good news in the sense that it is not pronounced, it's not widely impacted the global scene yet. But this is the challenge. When the vaccine is there, you start the vaccination process, people get vaccinated, then you have new virus being, mutate, and because this is transmitted through contact, animals to human, human to human, and then they could be with human to animal in some of this country, as you know, because of hygiene and all that, and human to animals, the interaction that could lead to further, new virus that could be evolved. We don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think whatever you say, yes, I agree with all those things. But at the end of the day, I'm still looking at all the for Tabung Haji, yes. There's a lot of things that we have to do because of the depositors and things like that. But on a community community thinking and things like that, it's still like, most of them, whoever I know, my friends, start doing their own garden. Even, in my neighborhood, they even plant paddy. I'm in Shah Alam, in very near here. Paddy in the area. So everybody is like thinking beyond that. It's like going back to basics, looking for all those where we can find food and stuff. So that kind of thing worrying, not only because most of us are going to go to another level of age. The children will be without food or whoever they're thinking now. So I think on the organizational, and it is a bigger agenda because of the economy and things like that. But on another level, whereby the communities, you see, there are still talks like even with the vaccine, things will not get better, things like that. So I think, yeah, like you say, it's true.
So let
The
me, I'm
uncertainties.
mindful of time. So let me now just conclude. Can you see the slide or not?
Yeah.
Can you see the slide?
So we didn't see the slide, yeah.
Okay, you can see the slide. Okay.
No, we can't.
Oh, you can see the slide.
We can't see the slide.
Okay, give me a minute. Let me see. I don't know what happened. Okay. Okay. How about now?
Prof, I got another
Okay.
question for you.
Okay, let me just conclude by a few quotes. In terms of can you see I can see now the Rudolph Giuliani, in September 11 in 2001, he went through, at that time, he's someone I respect. I read a lot about him, his book. Good leaders, or to me, great leaders emerge in time of crisis, how you manage, how you handle, and he did very well during the September 11 in New York as the mayor of New York, how he handled it. And that's a very good example during crisis. You can see how people stand up and become. This is a very interesting German philosopher in the 19th century, Arthur Schopenhauer, says this very interesting. He said that, and I think this, all of us, based on what we talk about, critical thinking, disruptive mental agility, and it's a saying that, I really like. The task is not so much to see what no one yet has seen, but to think, now listen very carefully, to think what nobody has yet thought about, what everybody sees. So everyone can see the mountain, everyone can see the pandemic, everyone knows the disruptive impact, everyone talks about it. But the challenge as a leader, as a CEO and a C-suite leader and a board, what do you do? What do you think? That's where the disruptive mental agility comes in. How do you transform your team, your organization, the way you challenge your mental model? This is what he meant about your ability to rethink or shift your mental model. And just to share with you, I've curated content. There's quite a number of videos. I think you may have received the link for the videos. Go, and there'll be next 1 week. There'll be more new videos will be coming up in the Disruptive Leadership Institute. What do you call it? I'm sorry, in the YouTube. The link is there. You can go in and look at the videos. Of course, the CE, you have a YouTube channel also. It's a lot of videos, and I'll be putting all the case study in the next 1 to 2 weeks. You can go in, and every week there'll be new videos being uploaded. So subscribe to the channel to be updated. On the Disruptive Leadership Institute, and also articles will be made available on the website. Just to share with you, we are launching worldwide based on the book. Worldwide, the book has been accepted in many European IMD, even Stanford, many other universities in the US are using it. Part of the publisher, Business Expert Press, is offering the book in the digital form to many universities. They're using it in the library. In Malaysia, we want to launch in Asia the new MBA in Disruptive Leadership and Digital Transformation by IP National School, which I'm a professor of practice. In Malaysia, the NQA, Malaysia or Lembaga Akreditasi Nasional, has given the approval for the MBA in Malaysia. So we are recognized. So the Malaysian government is recognized, so it's approved. And also the UK government, the Department of Education, the UK Ministry of Education is also recognized as a qualification for NQ level 7. So the details is there. I'll give you the slide. You can go and click the link. So if you're interested in that, let Rina know. She contact me. I can give more information. And you got all my contact on my LinkedIn, my personal LinkedIn, my DLI, Disruptive Leadership Institute LinkedIn, Facebook, and every week there'll be 2 postings about latest development in the US. Over the weekend there'll be at least one article about Harvard Business Review, or from E! Magazine, or from one of the other business journal, or Sloan MIT. So we have many of these latest research information on disruptive leadership that we would make available to all of you. So with that, so what I like to do, I would like to so I think you can see me now. Yeah, you see me back? Or Rina, can you see me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so let me just conclude. So I think that's the end of the presentation. Unless there's a question, I'd like to thank all of you. Dr. Nick, Rina, and the rest of the leadership team for inviting us. So Taranjit, you'd like to say a few words, Taranjit? Taranjit is my very close partner and associate, and very strong. He's been established, in Malaysia. Let me just give you a quick introduction yourself, Taranjit. And
sure. Thank you, Prof. So it's indeed it's a pleasure being here. Thank you, Rina, for inviting me. I see some familiar faces around. Dato' Marina, there we go, from the old days. There we go, from the old days in Malaysian Airlines. Look forward to catching up with you in due course. But what Professor Sattar has mentioned is absolutely spot on. There are tremendous requirements now to reframe and realign the way we are thinking. And I think many times now we have come to the state where the old ways of thinking no longer applies. We have just completed, as Prof had mentioned, we've just completed a piece with one of the banks here in KL. And it's also very emphatic that it's come across from the chairman down that we need to reframe and revamp our thought process. Digitization is the way to go forward. Work from home is the way to go forward. And to be fair, we've now got the whole area about ecosystem management, which we never had before. And that entire ecosystem management was an area that we talked about collaboration, and we put it under collaboration. But this is a lot more than just pure collaboration. To be fair, we had the issue of things like business acumen. To be very honest, for you to come to the level that we're in right now around the table, business acumen is no longer a play. That is a given. So I'm not even going to go out there and start rating and assessing people around business acumen, because for you to come to this stage in your career, you need to have that as a default. So I'm now thinking about other things. What are some of the other things that we can now start to apply? One of the participants, Maizala, mentioned very nicely about the uncertainty and where does this now leave us? But that's what this is all about: the ability to adapt and realign ourselves and pivot in a very quick and sustainable fashion. Sustainability today is the name of the game, and cost containment is the way forward, to be very honest. And if we don't talk about this area of sustainability, and I find this, and I've been playing in this space for about 25 years, working very closely with the PNB people, with Tan Sri Azman in the old days when I was doing Malaysian Airlines restructuring. One of the things that came across very emphatically was the almost not approach to competencies. We did not see the value or the relevance of what people used to provide, because we thought, look, the grass is green and the sun is going to shine until the end of the day. All of a sudden, that is not the case. The grass is drying up and the sun is not shining the way it is supposed to. What are the implications on us now as organizations? More so as organizations who are stewards of the nation, like Tabung Haji and some of the other areas. So those are my 2 cents worth, Professor. Back to you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Taranjit is, I think his credentials speak for himself. I'm very, very honored and very delighted, Disruptive Leadership Institute, to work with him. And Alhamdulillah, to find partner over the last, as I said, since 1985, being in Malaysia. We have a few partners over the years, and I'm happy that we share the same vision, in terms of values and how we can help clients in Malaysia, especially the GLCs. I think more than anything else, the GLCs needs a lot of help. And it is my experience working with MRT Corp, working with Prasarana, Samdabi, now Johor Corp, very, very large. And these names are mentioned because they have given the permission. So I'm giving you, and you saw Dr. Syed and me work very closely in the digital transformation of Johor Corp. It's tough. I can tell you it's not easy. But what works is you, all of you here in this room, Dato' Nick, all of you, with the chairman, with the CHRO, with all of you together. Rina has to, will be a partner, and you got Dato' Nick. Is Dato' still here? Dato' Nick. Alhamdulillah, you got the right person to steerhead your human capital. I've known Rina from So Alhamdulillah, I was very delighted when I heard that she has joined Tabung Haji, inshallah. But again, Rina is only one person. Her team need all of you, your support. And we are here at ELI, QSA, Quantum Step Advisory, we're here to support. So with that note, I want to say this book that that you see, and I have got the publisher permission, and I've given you the 2 chapter complimentary in the pack. There's a lot of very detailed, a lot of that only you may have seen, and all of you have seen the pre. I don't expect you to read all, but there are 2 chapter complimentary. But the rest of the chapter, the most important, chapter 5, chapter 7, chapter 10, all in this book. Rina, I've given Tabung Haji a very special, arrangement, and Rina will be able to, advise you later. But I advise you, if you do not get a book, at least read what I sent you. Very important, the pre-reading, inshallah, give you some fundamental, the most important aspect of what disruptive leadership is all about. And then join the LinkedIn group, and we can have dialogue. And Director Ranjan and I are here to support you. With that note, Alhamdulillah, thank you so much, and I'll hand over back to Rina. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Rina.
Waalaikumsalam, Prof. Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much, Mr. Taranjit. That was really, really insightful. Just to precaution you, I've actually WhatsApp you on moving forward, the steps to move forward. And yes, we are purchasing 20 books, hardcover books with a 30% discounted rate. So it's in the process of procurement. And moving on, after these are the 4 steps that I've WhatsApp you. And on behalf of Datuk Nick and also the C-Suites, I'd like to thank you for your time. And I know you've got a time slot for the C-Suite coaching right now, and you gave us 1.5 hours for Tabung Haji to be with you. Thank you so much, guys.
Pleasure.
After this, Siti Fazlina will take on. Yeah, and I withdraw from the scene. So the next will be Siti Fazlina leading on the next initiative for our leadership series. Thank you very much,
everyone. Thank you very much.
Taranjit, and thank you very much, everyone.
Yeah, I'll leave now. Bye bye.
Okay,
Thank you, guys.
thank you.
Thank you, Dato' Marina. Good to see you again.